The 4:30 Mass yesterday afternoon, there was hardly anybody here because everybody was home passing out candy. And then I figured some people are going to wake up at the old time and say, oh, we normally do 10:30, but we're awake, let's do the 9 o'clock. So I knew we'd have a good crowd this morning, and here we are. Not disappointed, not disappointed. I always think every year there's a certain urgency to this feast day, the Feast of All Saints. The whole message is, be a saint. That we're being told it's really the only viable option that we have. There's no other option that we're at all interested in. A few of the saints in heaven, several hundred, have an official ST before their name. The church, let's say, vetted them and proclaimed them saints. But of course, millions and millions and millions of people who are in heaven don't have that title. But they have something more important. They have the reality. They're in heaven with Jesus Christ forever. The entire goal of our life is to be a saint. Failing that, we would spend eternity in hell, apart from God, which is an unthinkable option. So the message today is, be a saint whatever it takes. Leon Bloy said, the only tragedy in life is to not be a saint. And he's right. Any other tragedy is dealable. We can deal with it. But not to be a saint means I'd be separated from God forever. That is not to be imagined. If you've been to Rome and to the Sistine Chapel, I know some of you have, you remember that incredible painting by Michelangelo in the chapel of the Last Judgment. It's there behind the altar. And in the picture, everybody on the left is going up to heaven, and everybody here on the right, as you look at the picture on the right, is going down to hell. A little sobering because there's an angel in both panels. This angel over here has a little book he's writing on. This angel over here has this great big huge book he's writing names on. I hope Michelangelo has that wrong. I really do. It always hits me every time I see it. Over here on the side going to hell, there's a guy sitting like this with his hand on his chin, looking out at us. And his face is wonderful. It's like, I messed up. The most important exam in my whole life, and I flunked. I can't believe it. And way down here in the bottom right is one of the cardinals that gave Michelangelo a hard time. He put donkey ears on him, and he has him going down to hell. So don't get the artist mad at you, okay? It's not a good idea. The message of his painting is the message of this feast day. Heaven is real, hell is real. Be sure to live so as to wind up in heaven. There's always taken a certain courage to be a saint. I think sometimes we can romanticize past times of church, of history, but I think it always takes courage to be a saint. Yes, we have some dramatic examples of that today. I was thinking of the 21 Coptic Christians, I think it was in Libya, on the beach there, that ISIS beheaded because they were Christians. Or in our own country, what was it, 4 or 5 weeks ago, there were 10 students who were killed, 7 who were injured, shot by a shooter at Umpqua Community College out in the state of Oregon. He said, stand up if you're a Christian. And if you stood up, he said, good, because you're going to see God in 1 second, and then he shot them. Those are martyrs, modern day martyrs, the state of Oregon, 5 weeks ago. We're still in the age of martyrs. But for most of us, the courage we're going to need is going to be more daily and less dramatic. If we speak out against moral evil, if we stand up for our faith, there will be those who try to silence us or ridicule us or dismiss us and cut it out, cut us out of whatever is going on. In other words, cheap holiness really has never been an option. It's an oxymoron, cheap holiness. It doesn't happen. One of my favorite stories, the priest is having a funeral. I don't know if I told you this or not, but I love it. And here's a casket right up here in front. And the widow and her children are in the front pew. And the priest is going on and on about this guy who died, how wonderful he was, how incredible, all the stuff he did. And finally the widow in the front pew can't stand it anymore. She stands up, she says, "Father, stop, open the lid in the casket, we got the wrong guy in there." In other words, no, we don't get canonized just because we died. That's not enough. It's how we live that's important. There's no such thing as automatic holiness. Holiness is not easily won. Our faith in the scriptures talk about warfare, that the life of a Christian is going to be warfare. It's going to be a battle. The world, the flesh, and the devil do not want us to be saints. And they're going to provide us with plenty of opportunities so that doesn't happen. But we have awesome weapons in this warfare. We have God on our side, His grace, His help every day. We have the sacraments. We have prayer. We have the example and support of our brothers and sisters. So we have more than enough awesome weapons, but we have to use them. In order to get to heaven, we need to use those weapons. While it is not easy, sanctity is possible for all of us. It's not like a mountain so high we cannot climb it. Jesus didn't set up a system where you need a PhD in theology in order to be a saint. There's so many in our Catholic bloodstream, so many saints that were just so little and down to earth. Thinking of Brother Lawrence in the Middle Ages. He was a cook in the kitchen of this monastery, very famous monastery, and rich and powerful people from all over would come to have spiritual direction with some of the famous monks there. And while they were waiting to see their spiritual director, they'd sit in the kitchen and Brother Lawrence is cooking the soup, and they would get talking to Brother Lawrence. And pretty soon, they all switched to Brother Lawrence for their spiritual director. What was he talking about? He called it the practice of the presence of God. He said, every day as you go through your normal day, just be aware, Jesus, you're right here with me. Whatever I'm doing, you're right here. And live in His presence every day. When you leave His presence, come right back. And that's the way to holiness. Just live in the presence of God. Remember St. Teresa of Lisieux, the little flower. She was a Carmelite nun in a contemplative monastery. Once she entered the monastery, except for the other sisters, she never saw any human person the rest of her life. She would pray for the world, and she introduced a little way. She said, just to pick a pin up off the floor can save a soul. She was powerful as an example of holiness. You've heard me talk about the duty of the moment. It's the royal road to holiness. If we are doing the duty of the moment, we are in the will of God and we are getting holy. So you're a new mom. You're changing the baby's diaper for the 20th time that day. If you change that diaper with care and love, as you change the diaper, you are getting holier. You're driving to work. If you drive to work with care, respect for others as best you can, you're getting holier. You're sitting in a meeting. You're trying to bring the best you can to that meeting. You are getting holier. You're with the family at night after supper, just hanging around, talking to one another, being the best mom, dad, son, daughter you can be. You are getting holier. To live the duty of the moment is the royal road to holiness. The greatest saints in heaven might not have even gone into first grade, and they can be the greatest saints in God's kingdom. So sanctity, let's be clear, is possible for all of us. None of us can say, I couldn't do it. But if we do everything on our bucket list and fulfill all of our life's goals, but don't wind up a saint, we're a failure. We're a sad, terrible flop. Because we've got to wind up with Jesus in heaven. Think of this. Our Blessed Mother is the only saint in heaven who is perfect. Every other saint, the greatest saints you can think of, every other saint in heaven sinned. We can only say they're sinless about Mary. Every other saint sinned, as you and I do. But ultimately, they chose to be loyal to God, and so they're in heaven. When we pray the Apostles' Creed, we say, I believe in the communion of saints. So it's a family, it's a communion. The saints in heaven, the saints in purgatory, the saints here on earth. We're all part of this wonderful family. The saints in heaven are like our big brothers and sisters. They intercede for us. I love to think of that. Like right now, Mom and Dad, my aunts and uncles, loved ones that I have there, are praying for me. And the same with you, with those who love you. They intercede for us in heaven. They give us good example with their lives on earth. They give us the strength in our weak times to be faithful to God. There's two schools of thought on sanctity. One school is that life on earth is a battle, a struggle. It's not easy, and that's true. We've already talked about that. The other school of thought says it's heaven all the way to heaven, and that's true too. Virtue is its own reward. When we are living our life in union with Jesus Christ, like, Lord, right now, the best of my ability, I'm doing your will, and I'm living my life in union with you, there's incredible peace, incredible joy that comes from living our life that way, regardless of the external circumstances of our life. If we're with Jesus Christ, our worst day is a joy. Jesus is there with us. St. Paul says, whether I live or whether I die, I'm with the Lord. Just a couple of quick All Saints' Day suggestions in conclusion. First of all, if you do not yet have one, have a favorite saint. Get to know them. Read about them. Look their name up on the internet. Read about them. Pray to them. Become their friend. It will have a wonderful, positive impact on your life if you develop a close relationship with a favorite saint. Secondly, think of your loved ones who have died, especially those who inspired you with their life. Why did they inspire you? What qualities did they have that you loved and cherished? I was just thinking, the list is as long as my arm, but like for me, for Dad. Dad was the soul of kindness. He was always so interested in people, other people. Of course, they loved him for that. Mom, I would say energy to love. She could be exhausted with our big family, but she always had the energy to help you out, to love you. In other words, there is a reason that you loved the qualities in your loved ones who have died. I'm suggesting that the reason is because God is calling you to develop those same qualities in yourself as well. We say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And when you're imitating the saints, that's the best of all. Happy feast day to all of you aspiring saints.